Hello world, welcome back, Making It Nation. Welcome to another episode of Making It with Chris G, where we have conversations with people in the world of entertainment who are making it from behind the scenes to the spotlight, sharing their stories and insight to help you get one step closer to making it. Today is week 3 of our Nashville series. The series is almost coming to an end, and today we get to listen to a booking agent. His name is Alec Vidmar and works for United Talent Agency, or otherwise known as UTA. He has a really great story from starting in the business when he was in college, but more on that in just a few minutes. We had a great interview last week with Catherine Forbes. I hope y'all had the chance to listen to her ideas and skills and tips and tricks when it comes to marketing and social media. She definitely had a lot of great insight. If you get a chance to listen back, please do. And I have a quick announcement for you guys. We're going to have a music business talk on Twitter on November 1st. You can join me and Catherine on Twitter for a music business talk from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. To get involved, just use the hashtag MBTalk, MB for music business talk, to engage in a conversation. And you can also search the hashtag MBTalk on Twitter to read the conversation as it's going on. And when you search the hashtag MBTalk, make sure you go on live, not top posts. So that way you can see the posts as they're coming in live, all right? And just in case you miss it, and this is next week or this is months later or 20 years down the road, if the internet's still here when you're listening to this, you can still search MB Talk on Twitter, the hashtag MB Talk, and the little search option in the top right, and you can still see the conversation. We're going to have a special guest every single month that we can ask questions and engage with. The time will be different, but just follow me on Twitter or Instagram. I'm at Chris Goyzueta, ChrisGoyzueta, and I'll definitely be posting all the details and promoting the MB Talks there as they go on. So check those out if you want to learn a little bit more. It's also a great way to engage with our guests, to ask some questions that maybe I didn't get to ask on the podcast, ask me some questions. We'll also have our students, my students from Full Sail University, involved every month as a part of their class in artist development, and they'll be engaged. You'll get a chance to interact with them as well. So it's a great opportunity to network, meet people, and also learn a little bit more about the music industry. And I just want to encourage you guys, please subscribe on iTunes. If you get a chance to share this podcast with your friends, I would greatly appreciate it and love it. If you have an extra 30 seconds, please leave a quick review. 5 stars will be awesome. This helps so much. If you leave these reviews and you subscribe and you share, the amount of listeners and downloads are continuing to increase week after week. I think every episode is over 100 downloads already. So not, thousands or millions of downloads yet, but we're getting there. We're building a base, and I'm really appreciate you guys sharing the podcast, listening, subscribing, leaving your reviews. This will definitely help get more and more guests and interesting stories and interesting feedback to share with everybody. So thank you all so much for your support, for subscribing, and for your feedback. And let's get to a lesson for the week. So this is not based on last week's episode. As last week, I just had a lesson that spoke to me for the week. And this week is something that I taught in class today. And it's also a graphic that I shared on Instagram. So if you check out my Instagram feed, you can see the graphic there. I posted a graphic on October 24th, and it's basically an outline of a mind map of aspects that make up your story. So when it comes to being a creative in the world of entertainment industry, and even if you're in sports, this is still important when it comes to learning how to share and tell your story. And this mind map kind of lays out all the basic elements that make up your story. So as an artist, entrepreneur, or a brand, it's important to learn to be able to define and tell your story. If you're lost, create a mind map. Use the one I put out there as a guideline. I'll add it to the show notes as well, so you don't have to go search for it. Aspects that make up your story of you, your company, your brand, you're an artist you're working with or a creative you're working with. Think about the following elements. Where are you from? What's your culture? Lifestyle, values and beliefs, experiences, challenges, skills and talents, and relationships. All of those are elements that make up your story, right? So how does your culture or where you're from impact your story? Sometimes, depending on where you're from, those elements can really impact your story. And it doesn't have to be necessarily from a different culture. If you're from a place like New Orleans, that really living there and experiencing the lifestyle of the people that live there, there's a culture around their lifestyle. So where are you from? How does that affect your story? How does your lifestyle affect your story? Do you have a unique, special lifestyle that's different from everyone? Are you, I don't know, a CrossFitter? Are you vegan? Or are you the typical ones? I don't know why I picked those two, but is there something about your lifestyle that describes your story, that tells your story? So look into your lifestyle. What are your values and beliefs? How are they unique and different from others? What is there something about your values and beliefs that stands out? That's something that you want to tell in your brand or in your story? What are some experiences you've come across in your life? Everyone has different, unique experiences. How do your experience influence you and your story? And what challenges have you overcome in your lifetime? Some of those challenges can create some of the most unique stories out there. And a lot of times those challenges can be heartbreaking. They can be inspiring. How does the challenges you have overcome, how do they help you tell your story? What are some special skills or talents that you have? If you're a musician, do you have some other special skills that make you different from everyone else that are out there? And then are there any special relationships that you have? Sometimes your relationships really help define your story as well. So think about those elements. I'll have the graphic in the show notes. You can look it up on my Instagram feed too if you want to reference it back. But kind of start with yourself in the middle and then maybe draw out a branch or do an outline if you don't want to do mind maps. But kind of draw out a branch for each of these elements and then elaborate a little bit more on those elements, and that will help you figure out what your story is. And then once you have this outline of a mind map of your story, then start figuring out how you can dial it in and tell and share your story with the world and keep it embedded with your brand and have a consistent message that you put out there. So that kind of goes hand in hand with your social media that we talked about last week with Catherine. Knowing your story and your brand helps you be able to tell that story and share that story through social media. So hopefully that was helpful. Learn how to tell stories and figure out your story, and that will definitely go a long way as one of the first steps in your journey in the entertainment industry and even as an entrepreneur. So let's get on to today's guest. Today we're talking to Alec Vidmar, and Alec Vidmar, he is the definition of a hustler. He's someone that's patient, always gives back to his relationship more than he asks in return from them. From day one, when he started at UCF, he dived in head first into the music business. He started working with the UCF Concert Committee, which led him to being able to work with AEG Live as a runner and promoter rep. And he was also interning for Fly South Music Group, a management company based in Orlando, Florida. Then he worked as a talent buyer for Club Firestone, which is now Venue 578 in Orlando. He worked as an artist in artist relations with me at the Plaza Live, where my journey begins. Our journey crossed paths there, also in Orlando, Florida, while he was also managing and working with artists from Average Joe's Entertainment. He learned every aspect of the business as a promoter and manager, and then became a booking agent, which led him to move to Nashville, Tennessee. As a booking agent, he continued to hustle and work hard for his artists, which landed him a job with the agency group, which later on got bought by United Talent Agency, which is one of the biggest booking agencies in the world. Alec leads by example every single day, making it in the music industry and making it a lifestyle, not a career. If you want to be successful in the music business or the entertainment business in general, and even as an athlete, you have to make this a lifestyle. It's not just a hobby. It's not a career. It's more than a career. It's a lifestyle. And Alec is the living, breathing example of that. Alec lives by example and making this his lifestyle every single day. He gives so much to his career and to his artists that he recently got recognized with a nomination by IEBA, the International Entertainment Buyers Association, and he was nominated for Young Professional of the Year. Congrats to Alec for this huge nomination and for recognition within his industry. Alec's work ethic is going to continue to bring him great experiences, and he's also someone that's going to be very successful in this business one day. I am very happy to share this interview in this part of his journey and can't wait to hopefully interview him again down the road to share where he has gone since. So ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for listening, and please enjoy this interview with my good friend Alec Vidmar. Yeah, so we go way back. I mean, I've known you for years, since Orlando. Like, tell me a little bit about like how you got to Nashville and like your whole journey from being a UCF student to ending up as an agent at United Talent Agency.
So it kind of started in when I was younger and just graduated high school and ended up going to University of Central Florida, and they kind of. I just started following around the concert director constantly, and ended up meeting him for one of the first shows and kind of helped him run the stage production on it. And it turned out about a month later that they needed somebody to run the stage for the homecoming concert, and he had to go back to his hometown for some family event, and kind of put me in charge of the stage deal, and ended up meeting with Alan Anders, who you've worked with over at AEG Live. And we kind of bonded over both Eagle Scouts and kind of bonded over that. And he started having me operate as a runner for him on different shows, including at your old venue at the Plaza Live. Right. And so I did that, and he basically kind of took me under his wing, and we went and did a bunch of shows all across the state of Florida. And then at that time, as well as working inside of a audio and video warehouse, just kind of hooking up audio systems and that kind of deal when I wasn't at school. And that kind of blossomed into selling some production pieces over to UCF for some of their shows, and ended up getting the concert director job the next year at UCF. Nice. With that, we created a little festival that was called the Green Waves, that was all energy efficiency and green energy based music festival for the students.
Was that a one-time festival, or is
that was I think we did that 3 years in a row.
3 years in a row, nice.
3 years in a row.
And that was on UCF campus?
That was on UCF campus, yeah. So we had, I think the first year we had Less Than Jake, and then a bunch of kind of local bands. And then the next year we had 3 stages with J. Cole, Amberlynn, We the Kings, Foxy Shazam, The Movement, Supervillains, and then a whole lot of other local.
That's an incredible lineup. And that was the second year?
That was the second year, yeah.
Wow, very nice.
And then third year we had Calvin Harris and a few other kind of EDM style acts on it. So from there I met Randy and Moore with Fly South Management, and we worked on kind of developing some new Orlando acts and trying to steer them in the right direction. While I was still doing stuff with AEG, and then ended up starting working as an assistant talent buyer at Firestone Live with Tim Sweetwood, who's now doing Shaky Knees and Shaky Boots and Shaky Beats out inside of Atlanta. Okay. Also did The Masquerade for a really long time, had a long tenure over there.
And he was with the Bowery South for a while too.
And he was with, he was Bowery South, and then he's over at C3 now.
Okay. Wow.
So he's doing that and has made a heck of a career for himself. But yeah, so ended up doing that, and then one day I was watching CMT, and there was a Kenny Chesney documentary, and my dad was sitting next to me, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, I know that guy, the guy that was in the mixing room." And I was like, "Oh, who is that?" And he said, "Oh, this is a guy named Tom Baldrica, and he worked with me at a sporting goods store up in Minneapolis that my grandpa used to own." And turns out that my grandpa and his dad were best friends up in Chisholm, Minnesota, right next to Hibbing, Minnesota, where Bob Dylan's from.
Oh, cool.
And he was working at a smaller independent label in Nashville called Average Joe's Entertainment, which handles Colt Ford. At the time had Montgomery Gentry, handled Brantley Gilbert, a bunch of those kind of things. So I ended up going up for about 4 months and working with him, and realized that most of the bands at their label, because they were so left to center, it was more that country hip-hop type stuff, they didn't have, besides Colt Ford, realistically, they didn't have representation from a booking standpoint because nobody knew how to book them. So I spent my whole tenure basically there creating a way for them to start working from a touring standpoint, because their songs weren't being played on the radio. It was so crucial that they were out there playing in front of people. And we figured out a way to place them at mud bogs. And, a lot of those mud bogs, people will, take their whole family out there, and it may be $30 a person to camp the whole weekend and have entertainment, have a concert, the whole 9 yards.
What's a mud bog for?
A mud bog is like basically they dig out a huge hole and they spray it down with a fire hose, essentially, fill it up with water, and the mud gets into it, and then they just race cars and trucks and ATVs and UTVs through it the whole time.
Have you been to one of those?
Everybody drinks and goes nuts. Oh, yeah, I go probably once every 2 months. I'll be at one on the 17th of September.
That
so you're
sounds like
coming
a lot
out.
of fun.
So it'll be good. Yeah.
And then where do they have bands playing then too during those?
They do. And it's one of those components. My big selling point is a lot of them didn't originally, but my big selling point was going, you have these events every other month essentially.
Right.
What's making people go back to them over and over again? What's different? How do we make it an added value?
Right.
And that was kind of the selling point for the concert, because a lot of these acts had really strong YouTube presences, and really they would sell like 70-30 on records. They would sell 70% of them hard records in Walmarts and things like that, and then the other 30% would be online.
Okay.
So it was all these people in rural areas where typically they don't have full venue setups.
Right.
So what we would do is we would go in and we'd make it really easy for the venue owners and say, look, we're going to do this added value piece to it to make it so it's a different event, so you get the same people coming back to every single event. There's always something different.
Right.
And basically what we would ask is to have a electrical setup, power, and then 2 flatbed trailers back to back, kind of creating a stage.
Okay.
And then we would bring in the sound, lights, and the band, all for a set price.
Wow.
So then they would come in and they would do that.
So you would bring the full production from the artist standpoint?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And most of the time those are on Saturday and Sunday, so we would go in and we would do kind of a riskier, club play that they're not getting paid as much on a Friday night.
Okay.
And then go in and do the more soft ticket mud bog plays on the Saturdays and Sundays.
Okay.
So that ended up kind of developing into a business, and the artists started telling other artists about me, and at that point I was just booking bands out of my college apartment.
And this was from UCF? Still?
At UCF,
okay.
Yeah. And then I kind of hit a certain point where I had Bubba Sparks, and I had a few other kind of older hip-hop guys that were now under my tutelage that I was representing exclusively, and was kind of tired of doing my own contracts and everything else, and ended up meeting up with the Bobby Roberts Company. And the Bobby Roberts Company was a small mom-and-pop agency that handled a lot of heritage acts, everything from Ray Price to Merle Haggard to Marty Stewart and the Fabulous Superlatives, John Michael Montgomery, John Anderson, Pam Tillis, a little bit of everybody that had, some hits between 1970 and, the early 2000s.
Right.
So it was with them for about 8 months.
So
and
you brought your roster from Average Joe's to the...
I did. I brought a few of them. I think I want to say I dropped probably half the roster,
okay.
Because I was taking over a territory there. So I kept a certain amount of RA clients, or responsible agent clients, ones that if anybody in the office brought in an offer, it would go through me,
okay.
and I'd bring it to the artist. But then I also had to handle all of their roster for everything on the West Coast. So I was there for about 8 months. They were purchased by one of the biggest international booking agencies, the Agency Group. Mm-hmm. And then 8 months later, the Agency Group was bought out by United Talent Agency based out in Beverly Hills.
Okay. And then what was United Talent Agency? What's the difference between them and, I guess, traditional booking agency?
So the difference with United Talent Agency and a traditional agency is it's full service. We do everything from voiceover work to movies to television to social media accounts for labels and for clients and things along those lines. They just didn't have a full-blown music arm. They had, a few clients. They had Mariah Carey. They had Kanye West. They had Melky Chance. They had a few things along those lines. Jessica Simpson, but they didn't have a full-blown music department. So that's what the Agency Group had. We were a full-blown music department. Right. We had some literary agents and things like that, but nothing, and a few speaker agents, but nothing to the caliber of, television agents and movie agents and things like that, where, CA and William Morris, they had the full service.
Right. Okay.
Where once they had the huge music arm, which was the Agency Group, mm-hmm. They basically had the full service.
Okay, so there's basically a benefit for both parties to basically join forces and come together.
Correct.
That's awesome. That's really cool. That's a cool story.
It's a big win for everybody.
So for those that don't know, what is a booking agent and what does a day in the life of a booking agent look like?
So a booking agent, basically the ultimate goal is to get as many opportunities and the best opportunities for our clients. Mm-hmm. Whether that's movie deals, for the most part on my side, or television deals or speaking engagements or anything along those lines. For the most part on my side, it is almost all booking shows.
Okay. And this is like shows at clubs, festivals,
everything.
Casinos. Okay.
Everything.
Now, do you talk to the other agents on those other departments now too, and try to see if there's opportunities for your artists?
That's a big thing with the United Talent Agency. We do a ton of we cross opportunities quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So, for example, like with I forgot the actor's name that's in Ray Donovan. He wanted to do some music video stuff, and it turned out that X Ambassadors, one of our rock clients, needed a kind of high-profile television or movie star inside of their music videos. We were able to get both those acts taken care of by having him inside of the X Ambassadors music video.
Cool.
So we do a lot of stuff like that. Patrick, the lead singer from Filter, we're able to secure him a deal with composing a whole soundtrack to a movie. Mm-hmm.
Oh, very cool.
A lot of things along those lines.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it definitely opened up a lot more opportunities.
Yeah, a lot more placement in things, placement in commercials, placement with sponsorships. There's just a lot of cross-referencing.
What does your average day look like as a booking agent?
So the average day is essentially kind of just waking up first thing in the morning, rolling over and looking at my emails and looking at everything that I missed while the 8 hours I was asleep.
How many emails a day do you think you get?
Right around 500, I would say.
Wow, that's insane.
In that range.
How do you manage all that?
I have an assistant that is absolutely incredible and helps me out on that aspect.
Your assistant kind of filters through emails and lets you know what's important, what's not.
Yeah, she helps me out with that, and then I also am just pounding away at the keyboard. Okay. So I do, I would say 40% of my day is on email, mm-hmm. and the other 60% is on the phone.
Okay.
And there's a lot of times where I'm emailing while I'm on the phone. Mm-hmm. I'm a big proponent of outgoing calls.
Right.
So I try to do 100, 120 outgoing calls a day.
Wow.
That's kind of the goal.
A lot going on. Yeah. So like with so many emails and so many phone calls, it takes a lot of mental focus. Do you do anything to help you with mental focus? Like do you meditate, or do you have any kind of practices to help you mentally a little bit?
Anything with my hands, basically. So whether it's, I own a really large fish tank that I sit there and I'll go home and clean that, or I'll, build something or do that kind of deal. And then the other piece is I run a lot just to decompress from the day.
Cool. What are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about a booking agent and what their role is?
That instantly we should be able to get you on Lollapalooza and, have, no matter what point in the career you are, that everything's just going to get handed to you and you're all set.
Right.
Your touring is done. And that's not the case.
I always say, like, the day you get signed by an agent, you almost have to work 10 times harder to kind of stay on their radar and be able to get those opportunities they can give you. But if you're not willing to work hard enough for them, it's kind of like
it's kind of the old adage too with record labels. It's easy to get signed, but it's hard to keep your deal. That's the hard part.
Yeah, for sure. What advice would you give to someone that is interested in becoming a booking agent?
Work like a dog and don't have a backup plan.
Work like a dog, don't have a backup plan. We talked earlier a little bit about the process of becoming an agent. So let's say someone, because the old school way is like you literally work in the mail room sorting mail. How is it in these days with the advances in technology and everything? What does the journey look like for someone that's working their way up in a booking agency?
So I mean, most of the time it's a mailroom deal. You'll start in the mailroom and then you'll end up being a kind of a floater, picking up when other assistants are out, kind of holding down their desks, and then eventually getting assigned to somebody, and then after that becoming some kind of booking coordinator, helping book with that specific agent that you're working with, and then eventually becoming an agent.
Right. Okay.
And that's one of those things that it really differs this time and age where there isn't a set amount of time.
Right.
Sometimes it may take 10 years. Sometimes it might take 6 months.
Wow. So there's somebody can be in the mailroom to a floater to literally becoming an agent within 6 months? That happens?
Potentially, yeah. There's all kinds of different ways that it can happen.
Right.
It's hard work is always the best way to get luck. So
totally, yeah. And then for those artists out there starting out, like what's the best thing they can do to get on a booking agent's radar and get an agent?
Really develop markets and build up crowds in multiple markets. It's the bands that really fascinate me are the ones that are out there chugging away at 5 or 6 markets, and they're doing it every 6 to 8 weeks, doing those same markets over and over again to the point where they're building up from 50 people to 150 people to 300 people to 400 people. Those are the ones where we start looking at it and go, oh my gosh, something's going on here. People are reacting.
Right. So I see bands all the time that are, like, especially in the baby stages, trying to figure out how it works. Like, let's say they want to go on a full East Coast tour. Let's go tour the country. Like, it seems like that's maybe not the best approach when you're starting out. It's better to start small, like focus on those 5 markets.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's really good to know. So let's get into the artist development questions.
Okay.
What is artist development to you, and what all goes into that?
Artist development for me is creating a certain perception on the artist of kind of developing them as finding out their brand, having building a really strong touring base of always out on the road, always practicing. The best thing that I always tell all they should be practicing 5-6 days a week, whether you have a show or not. You got to eat, live and breathe this. It may be your biggest love in the world, but it's also your job.
Right.
Development to me is finding the best opportunities for the acts that you think are going to make it. Picking the right horses. And it's not like you can go in and say, well, I want 150 horses and throw a bunch at the wall and see which one sticks.
Right.
I'm more about working with 8 horses and working as hard as possible and hoping to God that one of them makes it.
Yeah. So a lot of artists these days kind of have to, back in the day you could be a decent band and a label would sign you and do all the packaging and everything for you, like the look and everything. What are 3 things, because the artists are kind of doing a lot of that themselves these days. What are 3 things an artist can do to stand out a little bit more from the average bands?
Consistency is one. Making sure everything is consistent. Your social medias, your look, your brand, the whole 9 yards, making sure it's all completely consistent. Another piece to question was 3 things that can make them stand out.
Yeah, 3 things will make them stand out to get someone's attention, whether it's an agent, a label, a manager.
The music and the live show, consistency, live, and the music.
Okay, and that's why we're talking about practicing a lot. I mean, because by practicing more and more, that's by improving your live show that way.
100%. I mean, there's a lot of bands, we call them head turners, where you walk in a crowd and you may not be there for that show. You may be at the bar talking to somebody, and then you hear this band and you see this band and you turn your head and go, I'm buying a ticket every time
Right.
time this band comes through. I'm going to see the band.
Right.
You know, you need to be a head turning band is the ultimate goal. I think.
Yeah, totally agree. What can an artist do to develop themselves on a limited budget? Because a lot of these bands don't have a lot of money. How would you face that obstacle?
Getting creative.
Okay.
Yeah, going out and figuring out what you can do with what you have.
Okay. And what are some common mistakes bands make that you see when it comes to artist development?
Getting ahead of themselves is a huge piece. Kind of, thinking instantly, oh, I'm ready for this, or playing your cards too early. Not realizing that, hey, I got a little bit more to go before I pull this card.
Right. Okay.
And a lot of times those cards are pulled out right away and go, oh, I'm ready for this, let's do it. And then you end up blowing that and you never can come back from it.
You have any specific examples with that?
So a good example would be like, basically calling in a favor with somebody in a band that that's successful and going, hey, we just got this record, it's all set. We just put the band together. We want to go out and do a big national tour. Can we be your support act?
Right.
And a lot of times the support acts come from friendships and those kind of things. But then if they're not ready for that,
right,
they blow it and they may never have that opportunity again.
Right.
You want to make sure it's 100% a go. Your band is tight, the music is tight, the branding is right, you have the right people surrounding you, you have the right manager, the right lawyer, all that kind of stuff, and then you go in and you pull those favors. Pulling favors a little too early is not a good thing.
Yeah, so just because you have an album ready doesn't mean you're ready to go on tour.
No,
still a lot more work to do.
A ton.
Totally. What are some challenges you've encountered working with artists?
One of the biggest challenges is we think in somewhat of a mindset of from a business standpoint, and being really into the art is a huge piece of being a musician, but also understanding the business side, and that's always a struggle is to weigh out the two of how much does this business deal mean to your company, your brand, your band, in comparison to your artistic integrity and those kind of pieces.
Okay. Some of the questions we're asking are for an artist development course. So what would you like to see students learn and that are going to college to learn the music business and entertainment business? What would you like to see them learn and know by the time they graduate?
I think the biggest, it's not necessarily an answer to the question, but I think the biggest thing is going in and taking what you're learning and going out and jumping in with the wolves right away. Right. And saying, well, there's so many times right here, well, I went to school for this and that kind of deal, but them not implementing it right away. Going in and taking what you learn and then go and work for somebody for free for a while you're going to school. Okay. And working both ends of the spectrum.
Right. And then you did that while you were in school, right? You started working in the industry, what sounded like right?
18,
like from
yeah.
18. So it's almost like you shouldn't wait until you finish school. You should be starting right
away.
You start school.
You have that. It's going to take you at least 4 or 5 years to get your feet completely on the ground, and you might as well do that while you're at school and make those mistakes while you're in school.
Right. Exactly. You talked about being a runner earlier. That's one of your first things. What is a runner, and how does someone get into that kind of a job?
Persistence is probably the best way to get into any of these jobs.
Right.
Is the constant bugging.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to hand you any of these jobs. And basically a runner just is the artist liaison for the day of the show, making sure everybody's comfortable and stuff. They can really make or break the way that an artist feels about a show. The worst thing for an artist to feel is like every day is Groundhog Day.
Right. They
go into a venue and it feels like the day before.
Right.
How do you make it special for the artist?
Exactly, yeah. That's what I talk about all the time when I talk about being a runner. I mean, one, it's a great way to get started in the business, and it's a great way to build connections with the promoters 100%. And the artists and the tour managers. And yeah, I mean, artists are on the road most of the entire year, so they almost never see you home. So if you can make the artists feel comfortable and make them feel at home, that's a way you'll stand out, right?
100%. No question about it. And that's the way you stand out in front of tour managers and promoters, and that's the best way to get gigs and jobs and, make yourself from a freelance guy to an actual full-time employee somewhere.
Right. Are there any specific computer skills that you use on a daily basis that people should know by the time they go into this kind of career?
I think the first thing is Polestar. That was like the first thing that I had, Polestar Pro. That was the first thing that I learned, and I would sit on there for hours and just get familiar with, this agent represents this band,
right,
and this promoter does this festival, and understanding those things. So when you are in a sporadic conversation with somebody that's in the business, go, aren't they rep by CAA? Right. Aren't they, isn't X person managing them?
Right, being able to keep up with the conversation.
Being familiar with stuff and being able to, keeping up with trades and all that kind of stuff. So it's learning those programs like Celebrity Access, Polestar are crucial. And then the other piece is, knowing all the functions of a, Microsoft Outlook and a Gmail and those kind of pieces. And then the other piece is, of course, calendars, Excel. I mean, the basic things.
Right. Okay. That's good. All good things. So last few questions, kind of like the rapid fire questions. You don't have to answer them rapidly. You can elaborate as much as you want.
Yeah.
But what is a piece of media that you share the most with people? And this can be a book, a podcast, a video, a movie, or an online article. So example, something I share the most with people is the article by, I'm blanking on his name, Kelly something, the article of 1,000 True Fans. So that's something I share the most. It's just something that you share a lot with people.
Share with artists or promoters or
anyone that you deal with. In daily.
I mean, the biggest book that I always tell people about is I think it's wrote by the last name of the author is Passman, but it's Everything You Need to Know About the Music music business.
All you need to know about
that
is
the most. It goes and it explains all of the ins and outs of what percentages are typical, all the industry standards, but then at the same time it'll go in and tell you at the end of the day it's a handshake.
Right.
Yeah. So it's understanding both sides of that. There's the street piece of the music industry, but then there's also the technical side. And a lot of people forget that, I think.
That's a really good book.
Great book.
Yeah.
And they're always updating it.
I'll add that in. Yeah, they are always updating it. I'll add that in. So I'm going to have show notes for this episode too. So I'll add that book into those notes for sure. What's your definition of making it?
Being happy and, it's just, that's it.
Okay.
Being happy in what you do and want to wake up every morning and go, oh my gosh, I get to do this?
Right.
And my electric bill's paid for?
Yeah.
That's to me making it. Whether you're playing in front of 50 people or you're, booking Kings of Leon, if you're waking up in the morning and you're not happy with where you're at, you haven't made it.
Right. Totally
you're still
agree.
working for or something. And that's another piece is of always being content with where you're at, or not content, but happy with where you're at, but never content with where you're at.
Right.
Happy to be in the place, but always ready to move forward and wanting to move forward, never losing that drive. As soon as you lose that drive, I think you fell out of making it.
Yeah,
you're no longer making it.
Any advice that you have for the aspiring student or musician that wants to get into the music business?
Do everything that other people don't want to do.
That's
and
really
do the hard things.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Okay, and then any last, I guess those are some good words of advice, parting words of advice. Any way for people to get in touch with you or...
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll give you my information and stuff, and then I'll give you my email, and feel free to get it out to all the listeners.
Okay, great. Is there, do you use social media at all? Is there...
I do. I have Facebook and LinkedIn, but that's about the extent.
Okay, sounds good. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for doing this. It was great. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Hey everyone, thank you all again so much for listening to another episode of Making It with Chris G. Just want to encourage you one more time, please subscribe to iTunes or wherever podcasts live and leave us a 5-star review if you have an extra 30 seconds. This definitely goes a long way in helping us bring on more of these great guests and have these interviews and bring them to you for free. If you have any requests for guests or any questions or would like to be a guest, please reach out. You can reach me on email at chris@onelivemusic.org. That is Chris at ONELIVE music.org. Or you can reach me on Twitter and Instagram at Chris Goyzueta on both. It's ChrisGoyzueta. Try spelling that funky last name for your entire life. We're going to continue our Nashville series next week. This will be our last episode of the Nashville series, and we'll be talking to an entertainment attorney, trying to keep it diverse for you guys. So we've talked to a booking agent, a marketing specialist, a record label exec from Fuel by Ramen. A lot of great diversity, a lot of great insight. Looking forward to bringing this last episode of the Nashville series to you guys. Sad to see it come to an end, but we'll do it again very soon and have plenty of great guests in between. Thank you all so much for all your love and support. I hope to see you again next week on Making It with Chris G. And remember, try new things, be good to people, and in the words of the great Bob Marley, live the life you love. Take care, y'all.